Welcome to Blending the Family, the podcast. Topics can range from what is good wine on a first date, parenting tips, and not being afraid to ask for help. Here's your host, who was told by a guest that he was a podcast influencer. Well, you know the truth about that statement. Tommy Maloney.
Welcome to another edition of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I am your host, Tommy Maloney, coming to you from the beautiful hotel in Melbourne. Good day, mate. Put another shrimp on the barbie. Well, Melbourne, Florida, outside of Orlando. And I am super excited to be talking to you because after spending a day at a fucking day job you just despise, then why do you still do it? It pays the fucking bills, okay? Anyway, coming back to the hotel, knowing you have to finish up putting the podcast together, it excites me. It excites me so much. I'm going to have a sip of wine. Robert Moldavi's barrel-aged wine. Bourbon. Barrel-aged bourbon wine. Oh, so good. So good. You're probably asking, hey, Tommy, shut the hell up. Who's on this podcast? Thanks for asking. We have author, mediator, lawyer, Gabrielle Hartley. Her new book is called The Radically Positive Way to Separate Better Apart. She even has the Gwyneth Paltrow gave her kudos in her book. So, Gabrielle Hartley, Better Apart, The Radically Positive Way to Separate. And we're going to talk more about that. Some sad news to report. Before I started getting ready for this, Peter Tork, if you're old enough to remember who Peter Tork is from the Monkees, he passed away. He was only 77. Only 77. So, salute. Peter, I hope you are up there in rock and roll heaven, singing with Jimmy and Elvis, Bowie, Prince. Oh my gosh, I can go on and on. I love the Monkees. You know what? I'm on the side that the Monkees were a real band, not a play band. They were good. I loved them, and they were fun. They were so much fun. What else is going on? How you been? You been good? Doing okay? Are you? I would love to know. Are you on the treadmill right now? Are you walking your dog? Are you driving cross? What are you doing? What are you doing when you're listening to this podcast? I would love to know. Love to know. And just reach out any way you want. Twitter at Blending Family, at the Instagram. I have to confess, I do need to take my laptop in, so it'll be a while before I can respond back to you, okay? The laptop has to go in for some work, okay? Another sip of wine. All right. I don't know what else to mention. Is life good for you? Life's good for me, other than the stupid day job. But I'm excited. I think something's about to happen. Something's about to change. Matter of fact, I'm happy you brought it up. Matter of fact, do you remember the episode, and I'll put that if I remember, because I'm notorious, really good at forgetting things, when we had Johnny Nomad and his wife Lovely on, and Lovely said, hey, you two ought to do a retreat, a men's retreat. Well, let's just say, things are happening, okay? Things are happening. Not 2019, but it looks like 2020. Okay, stay tuned. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Oh. All right, I got to tell a story. So I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning, and all of a sudden it just hit me. It hit me putting together this event, and it's the way it's working. If we plan this right, it's gonna go national. People are gonna want this event. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. All right. Did I mention who's on the podcast? I did. Gabrielle Hartley. And what else? I don't know what else to mention with you. You're good people. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Well, let's just get right into who Gabrielle Hartley is. She's an attorney, mediator, consultant, speaker, and author. She's known for a unique, non-toxic approach to divorce that she developed over 2 decades in practice. Gabrielle keeps 99% of her cases out of the courtroom and at negotiating table as she effectively supports her clients to create a healthy, uplifting post-divorce life for them. Gabrielle served as court attorney for Judge Jeffrey Sunshine in New York City Matrimonial Court and is a member of the Massachusetts Council on Family Mediation. She currently resides in Northampton, Massachusetts with her husband and 3 sons. She was a lot of fun. And I've spoken to lawyers in the past, and it's like pulling teeth to get them to talk, but Gabrielle was not one of those people. She's got that great New York attitude, that East Coast attitude. We talk about, we talk about her book. We talk about the 5 steps in her book to helping overcome divorce. There was some. It was cool because not saying that she was analyzing me, because it doesn't really take much to analyze me, but we talked a lot about some personal history of mine and how it correlated to her book, and I'm just happy to hear it. And I like to hear an honest lawyer. That might be an oxymoron, but I firmly believe that if you're ever one of her clients, it's a good thing. Because one of the things I talked to her about was I just feel that, and I'm if you're a lawyer, come on, talk to me. You know what? Let's hash it out. If we have to, we'll hug it out. But it just seems that, in my experience, this is my experience, lawyers look at the money before looking at the case. Does that make sense? They look at the money before looking at the case. So they're like, oh yeah, we'll take this case. We'll take any case. Instead of saying to the client, you know what, maybe this isn't right. Maybe you should really rethink about this. And so that's just my 2 cents, okay? All right. You can find Miss Gabrielle at GabrielleHartley.com. That's GabrielleHartley.com. All right. There you go. So what have we talked about? We talked about Gabrielle Hartley being on the podcast, the passing of Peter Tork, and get ready for 2020. There could be a men's retreat. Oh, could there be ladies as well invited? You'll have to see. Anyway, as my future BFF would say, Mr. Terry Crews, your success is my success. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for caring. Please leave a rating and review however you get this podcast. I greatly appreciate it. And if you can, share it. Share it. Don't be afraid.
Warning. You're about to listen to a conversation, not an interview.
Let me give you here. How about this? Let me give you a little bit of backstory. What I like to do, and one of the things I love to do is meditation. And one of the apps on my phone is Headspace.
Mine too.
Awesome. So the book, Better Apart: The Radically Positive Way to Separate, which is a combination of lawyer and yoga. Yes?
Yeah, it's lawyer, mediator, meditation, yoga, coaching. Yes, it combines mindfulness and practical wisdom all rolled into one. Yeah.
There's nothing, and I'm sure, and I'm blanking on the other lady's name.
Elena Brower.
Yeah, I'm sure the 2 of you did research to say, hey, there's nothing like this out there anywhere in the world of books.
Yes. So I did an extensive, an extensive research marketing sort of project, because in order to get, a major book deal, you basically have to include a comp list. And there is no project that I could find ever which brought together mindfulness and sort of legal tips and on the ground perspective. So there's lots of books written by, anecdotal books written by a yogi or just a, insightful person who got divorced, who had lessons to share. And then there are books written by lawyers, which are, pitfalls and that kind of thing. But this is a
boring.
Yeah. It's like, and this is like bringing everything together with exercises and tips and, different things that we can do to elevate ourselves, not just talking at the person, but letting the person actually experience the process of making their life better.
Now, the book is through HarperCollins. How many book publishing companies did you submit to?
Well, we had an agent in New York, and they submit first round to just, the biggest agencies, and then we went for rounds of interviews, and then we went with HarperCollins. So they didn't submit to that many. I don't know the details of behind the scenes of exactly what happened, to be honest. I just, I did all the work.
Because a lot of people I listen to as far as podcasters, they talk about the whole chicken soup phenomenon that was rejected.
Okay, so if you want to know about my rejections, let's start it. We can talk about that, which was getting an agent who believed in the project was like the most rejecting. I was like, wow, if I want to feel like a 14-year-old going to junior high school or something like that, it was awful. But I finally did find an agent who understood and believed in the project, and that's how we brought it forward. And I couldn't be more grateful. But yeah, it's like, it is not for the faint of heart or faint of spirit to get a book published in the conventional path.
Well, as we were just talking before we started recording, I went in reading the book with an open mind, going, all right, here's a lawyer talking about divorce. And I'm like, oh, come on. And reading it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is, and I was somewhat kidding when we were first talking. And as a man, I want to say I'm one, because one of the things you bring up in the book, I wrote down, it's a recommended trusted teacher, coach, therapist. And I really highlighted that because when my wife and I, this is my second marriage and last marriage for the record, before we got married, she said to me, would you be open to going to marriage counseling first? And I'm like, sure, I am. I've been going through therapy since I was 13, battling my own personal demons. And so I really appreciated in your book that you talk about going through not just therapy, but like you said, a coach, a trusted teacher. I'm happy you didn't say trusted friend, because I heard somebody once say, if your friend's life is pretty screwed up and you're taking advice from them, you're as screwed up as they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is a danger in overgeneralizing. If you have a friend who's going through a divorce and there are certain things that your spouse does that are similar to what your friend's spouse has done, you might start overly, you might start to think like, oh, well, they're going to do this to me too, or, oh, his wife did this, or my wife's going to do that too. And that's natural. I don't think just because someone has a messed up life, that necessarily means they're going to give bad advice. Sometimes sometimes if you know the backstories of some therapists, their own lives aren't so spectacular, but they have a deep understanding. But that's different. That's why I said teacher, because there's distance between you, and there's like a reflective space where the teacher is not putting on you, hopefully, too much of their own stuff. That's always something that we have to be careful of anyway, though, which is why, in terms of getting through the divorce, if you are able to do it together, which I understand very well, a lot of people can't, but if you can, as many pieces of the agreement that you can do on your own with each other, I would really encourage everyone to do, just because it's more likely to stick and hold over the course of time. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And this is why when I am coaching other divorced men and they're getting ready to possibly get into a new relationship, either dating or even married, especially if they're getting married, the one thing I highly recommend, and this is to a lot of people, is go and go see marriage counseling, go see a therapist before you die, as you don't want to have the same mistakes that you did before and
That's
now
right.
you're creating them.
That's exactly right. If we don't start taking ownership of our own role in our dynamic, not to say blame, but ownership of our part, whatever that may be, right? Then we are much more inclined to repeat the same path and make the same mistake. Of course, we're probably going to make new mistakes, but that's okay, right? We're human and we're imperfect. And that's why a really important piece of what I call the five elements of an elegant divorce, which are encapsulated in Better Apart, is the idea of forgiveness or self-compassion. It doesn't mean you have to forgive your spouse. Like if your wife cheated on you or your husband, whatever, if anything bad, your husband spent all your money, your wife left you for another guy or whatever it is, it's not about forgiving them. It's maybe coming to a place to neutrality, like, oh, this is this person and this person has these demons and these demons were too big for our relationship, or however you make sense of it in your mind. But it's really about making yourself more whole, getting more in touch with what you need to activate your greatest inner power, so that when you go beyond your divorce and you enter whatever the next phase of life should bring you, that you can feel more settled and more at one with yourself, with where you've been and with where you're going. And even for people who've read this book, and I don't know, how many years ago you were divorced, but I've had feedback from people who were divorced, 15, 20. Actually, one man reached out to me and I wasn't writing with men or women necessarily in mind, but I was surprised. Somebody reached out to me that he'd been divorced for 35 years. And he said he wept. I don't know what he was, maybe he said that he felt like understood when reading the book, which was to me the highest compliment.
I want to go back to forgiveness, because I just met a gentleman this week who we had a conversation about forgiveness. His divorce isn't finalized yet. It's been 2 years of a battle.
Goodness.
Yeah. And he was telling me that he did forgive his former spouse. And I don't know, this is where I'm torn, because I don't think I've personally forgiven my former spouse. Mm-hmm. But is it, and again, what you were just saying, talking about forgiveness for, not necessarily for them, but about you.
Right.
What's your thought process, again, on forgiveness?
Okay. Yeah, no, okay. So first of all, holding on to anger gives us, makes us have like armor, so we don't feel the pain that we were caused by the hurt that someone else caused us, right? So like anger and frustration and all those strong visceral feelings that make us feel powerful, we need to begin with, or otherwise we would just fall apart, right? Like if we found out some horrible thing, whatever. So, but over time, the anger no longer serves us, right? So we got used to it. It's almost like we're in the habit of being angry. But now, and I don't want to ask anything personal about your life, but I think if you look at the person who betrayed you or hurt you in some way, and you look at their own path, you will, in most cases, find that had very little to do with you and more to do with them and their own issues, their own proclivities, and So, and even if it was personal, you need to turn onto yourself the question of, you need to ask yourself what the anger is doing for you. You know, there's a quote that I'm pretty sure I have in the book and I absolutely love. And that is, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Right? So think about that for a minute. So like,
I have to laugh because that is the same quote my mom uses on me constantly.
Well, listen to your mother. Because it's just, anger does not give you anything. It just makes you feel angry. It causes wrinkles. It makes your hair gray. It imbues your entire life. And letting go of the anger makes space in your brain for better things. So like when you think about it, what is our life, right? Our life is a combination of who we believe we are and who we actually are, right? And so like, but who we believe we are is fueled by what we think, right? So like, it's not what we drive, what our house is, what our clothes are, who we hang around with. It's the stories in our mind, right? And so where are those stories from? Those stories begin in childhood, right? They begin maybe even before childhood in our DNA. They're from teachers, from coaches, right? Like, and they feed on each other. And then if you were somehow made to feel less than, and then you have a spouse who betrays you or does something that feels bad, you feel it doubly. And it's so much harder to overcome, but that's okay, because you just need to recognize how you feel and allow yourself to feel the feelings deeply and then move through them. And then just take all that energy that is being put toward that other person and put it toward positive things for yourself, so you can be more deeply engaged in the beautiful life that you, like, for instance, have created with your new wife and, you know, your dog and whatever you have going on in your world. Even if I'm going to just, I'll tell a personal story, which I'm not sure if I can or can't share, but I'm going to go on a limb. So my,
go for it.
Well, it's not my story, but it's okay. It's not a client or anything. It's my family. So my stepfather and and his ex-wife had an acrimonious parting. And I was about 10 when I met my stepsister. Maybe, I was 10, she was 11. Anyway, my stepsister and I are close, and her mother, unfortunately, came down with cancer. And she was dying. She actually passed yesterday. That's why it's a very, time sensitive sort of thing. So,
oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So my stepfather was really down, and my mother, who he's been married to for like 35 years now, or 30 years or something, she was calling me and she was saying, he's so upset. He feels, and I said, it's because he has all these unresolved issues, right? Because they never really worked things through. He felt betrayed. He felt hurt. And then they didn't speak like ever again, except for like maybe a little bit around their grandchild. They had pleasantries. And so I said to my mother, bring him to her. And he went, and apparently she made it very easy. They had a beautiful last time together with my mother, and my stepsister was there, and so they had some closure, right? And so I find that so, for me, it's so moving, because it shows that, like, by all external accounts, it's not like his anger or all his feelings were right at the front for him at all times, right? But they were still there. And so even though this person had betrayed him, and even though the divorce was so long ago, and even though he was only married to her for a short time, that was like the woman who he fell in love with when he was maybe 25 or 30. Do you know what I mean? And and it was still held in him. And that's why the sooner you can work through the anger, the sooner you can let it all go. I mean, I have so many personal stories like that I can share, but that one is really like spot on to the issue that we're talking about. And had they been able to do it sooner, all the better. But at least they had the opportunity to sit together kindly before she passed. And I'm glad for them, and I'm glad for my stepsister as well.
Well, what I just wrote down, and it was right before you even said the word, but does closure equal forgiveness?
So forgiveness is such a personal thing, right? Like, so I'm not the arbiter on what forgiveness means to you, right? Like a Buddhist would say, don't ever worry about forgiveness, right? Just get your clarity and move forward. I would say by definition, getting your clarity is your forgiveness, right? So closure, I think to me, there needs to be some understanding, and some sort of letting go of anger. Now, does letting go of anger equal forgiveness? I think it does, but I think it's for you to decide, right? Again, I'm not talking about a glossing over, and I'm not talking about a quick glib, I forgive you. I'll tell you another, this is not actually a divorce-related story, but a forgiveness one, which is I had a friend who did something that wasn't very kind to me, and I am Jewish, and at Yom Kippur, you're supposed to make amends with anyone who's wronged you, okay? So you're supposed to say that you're sorry. And so for years, I struggled with this person because I hadn't done anything to this person, but I felt that this person had done something to me. And so I just decided to just say, I'm sorry that I let your actions upset me so much in my mind. Like I just told myself that. And I am releasing my anger towards you for how you treated me. And it took me a couple of years. I know that might sound weird because it's just a friend, you know, like a girlfriend, but I was so upset. And like now we're friends again, you know, like, I mean, this whole thing happened and whatever, but I had to release my anger to allow her back into my like emotional fold. So I think we have more power over our feelings than we believe we do. I just think it's a mindful journey forward, and it takes time.
That's beautiful.
Sorry, that was a really long answer. Sorry.
No, that's beautiful because I think it's different with men because
everything's different with men.
because I've got a dear friend of mine who I'm not the only one who's been trying to reach out to him. It's been a few weeks. And he's not responding calls. He's not responding texts. He's not responding. Even I've got another friend who's trying through other social media. But if he responded back, I'd be like, okay, dude, we're all good. But it just seems that, and I hate to sound sexist. I try to be a good man, but it just sounds like with women that it's. You need that forgiveness or you need that closure more than men. But
I don't think, actually, this person doesn't know that I said that. It was in my mind. You understand? Okay. So it's about you letting go of your anger. It's not about communicating your forgiveness to the person. Do you think this person knows how mad I was? Like, I couldn't, there was nothing for me to talk about to them. Like, they think they were right. Maybe I don't even know what they think, and it doesn't matter because I can't control their thinking. I discussed it when it happened, and then I, on my own, released the anger. The release of the anger is an internal working. It has nothing to do with your dynamic with the person from whom you've parted. That makes sense?
It makes sense.
And I think men and women both need that because it's all about using your mental energy. We only have a finite amount of time that we're awake, right? Like we want to use our wakeful hours doing positive things, thinking positive thoughts, having uplifting experiences. At least that's what I want to do.
No, I agree. I totally agree with you. I mean, another one of those little mom sayings was, my mom would say, well, she's just renting space in your head.
Oh, yeah. Smart mom. You have a smart mom. Renting space in your head. Yeah, like release that lease, let her out. Goodbye.
Yeah. And I'm not getting paid for it either. That's the worst.
Right. She's a holdover tenant.
Yeah. Ooh, that felt good. Let's talk about the 5 steps in the book. We have practicing patience, practicing respect for your ex, practicing clarity, practicing peace, and practicing forgiveness. Ooh, I think we've covered forgiveness pretty well.
So I just want to stop you. It's not about practicing respect for your ex. It's about practicing self-respect, which will then allow you to find parts of your ex that maybe you can respect, which is not necessary for all people and all situations. But this book is really just about you. Like, no matter how acrimonious your divorce is, you still have agency. This other person is not in charge of your life, is not renting space in your head and not paying the bills for the rest of your life. And you would be really surprised how many people allow their exes to dominate their thinking for decades and decades. It could actually ruin their whole rest of their life. And there's been some lawyers. My hope was that I would get this book into the hands of every single lawyer to give to every single client, right? But and it's still a hope, but I will tell you that a lot of the litigators are like, oh, my clients don't want this. And I'm like, your clients need this. And of course they want this, because nobody wants to feel like garbage. Nobody.
Well, I want to speak for the people that, and your backstory is unique because you have not gone through divorce, and let's knock on wood on that. But a couple of things. Number one.
Wait, I have to stop you with that, because as I did tell you, I have not been divorced, but when I was a kid, my parents divorced. And I would say that in a certain respect, children of divorce go through divorce on a whole different level. And they had a very good divorce, but I lived in blended families. I changed houses every day from the time I was 9 years old. I had every bit of awareness of what was going on, and my parents did it well without going to court or anything like that. So I wouldn't say that I haven't experienced divorce by any stretch of the imagination.
No, but
I haven't, as a grown-up,
right.
At this point in my life, knock on wood, been divorced. That's right.
So when I went through my first divorce, we didn't go through any mediation. We didn't go through any lawyers. A lot of it was my own fault because I was such in shock that it was happening, and it was a Sunday when she asked for the divorce. The next day I was on a plane to California for work. By Wednesday, FedEx had delivered the divorce papers.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I didn't get time to really think about the consequences. And what I mean by that, Gabrielle, is that years after that I ended up in family court because my former spouse wanted to move out of state with our son. And I ended up maxing out my credit card to pay for the lawyer, who I loved. He's a great lawyer. Had to borrow money from family, from my current wife to pay for this.
Right.
And so I agree that your book does need to be in the hands of more lawyers, because I have this fear, and I know you can't speak for every single attorney out there, good or bad, but it seems in my situation that my former spouse's lawyer should have said to her, I'm not taking this case. There's no reason for us to go move further because I'm a good dad. It wasn't that I wasn't spending time with my son. Excuse me. It was her wanting to control the situation and her having the power. And when I say power, she makes way more money than I do. And so I was really hoping that an attorney would have said to her, this is a waste of money on everybody's part. And that's why I do agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you. Even the meditation stuff, the mantra in the book. I mean, your book is very, very powerful, that it does need to be in the hands of more attorneys, because maybe your book can say to an attorney sitting in front of a client going, you don't need to move forward with this. Here's how this book, and here's how I want to help you without spending lots of money. If that all makes sense.
It does. I mean, I don't know the facts and circumstances, obviously, of your case. And it's probably not realistic to imagine that lawyers are going to put their own opinion on a relocation case. I mean, I personally, I've actually done what you're saying. I've said, I'm not sure about this. And I've sent clients to other attorneys because I don't like doing those cases because I just, whatever, they're emotionally complicated for me when I have my own opinions about it. But in terms of Better Apart, the book, I think in the hands of the client, it could give the two people a little bit more of an opportunity to look into each other's mind's eye. Like, it sounds like your ex, she might have had her own agenda that was totally separate from your agenda, and her perspective was totally different. And did she wind up moving? No, God bless the judge. He said, and I'm quoting him, that child is not leaving this state. Okay, good. Well, I'm happy for you. That worked out. Yes. How old is your child now? He will be 16 coming up. Wow. Awesome. Yeah. And do you live close to him? About 45 minutes away. Okay, that's not too bad. Too bad. No. It's worked out really well. Do you want to talk about the 5 steps? Oh yeah, you wanted to talk about the 5. Yeah. So just briefly, let me run you through them. Okay, so the first one is patience. So when you're going through a divorce or separation, or when you've already been through it, we all know we need patience regularly, but you need like extra patience, right? Like you need patience of a superhero to deal with the fact that the laws are sometimes unfair, or your ex is sometimes unreasonable, or the therapist doesn't take your side, or the kid seems to be turned against you, or, whatever the case may be, you have to take the long view and recognize that this is a marathon and not a sprint. And so in patience, I talk a lot about taking space. That may mean taking physical space, leaving a room. If it's too heated, don't react, but take space so that you can respond after thinking things through. It's about not giving a answer in the moment when you're emotionally flooded, okay? And it's about actively listening with the same intensity and passion that you wish to be heard in. And it's about recognizing that sometimes, as much as we may not like to hear it, slowest is fastest. And so what do I mean by slowest is fastest? So some of us, and I'm, raising my hand at the edge of my seat, like on Welcome Back, Carter, is that Mr. Carter? Exactly. That's totally me. But as we mature, we learn that that's not necessarily the best way to reach the outcome that we want. And for instance, my book, I could have self-published this book and it would have been out 3 years ago, right? But it wouldn't have gotten disseminated the same way. It wouldn't have been packaged the same way. I would have been self-published on Amazon, which would have been absolutely fine. But in this respect, I decided to stay the course and stick with my 8 million rejections until I finally got somebody who said, hey, yeah, it's funny because Chicken Soup for the Soul, that you brought that up, that was definitely something that kept me going through the process. I was like, well, they had a lot of rejection too. But so the first step is patience. And when I say first step, it's really an iterative process. Each one of us is different and we each need work in different areas, but patience is sort of the umbrella for everything. Patience with yourself, patience with everyone around you. And in the chapters, we talk a lot about ways to work on your patience practice. Like if you can't, and one more thing on patience, if you can't actually take physical space, you can take space right in your chair, sitting down, taking a couple of deep breaths in and out slowly through your nose, out through your mouth, through pursed lips, slows down your whole body, calms your mind, and maybe whatever you say in response won't be as crazy as it might have otherwise been had you just answered impulsively. So the next step, not necessarily in this order, is respect. And that's about self-respect, really. That's about recognizing your humanness. It's about letting go of your shame story, the stigma that you may feel because of your demised relationship, right? The deep wounds that may be ripped open when you get divorced. Maybe your parents divorced and you thought you'd never get divorced, and then you find yourself divorced and it just feels awful. It's about building yourself back up from the ground up. Maybe you never really had a respect practice. You know, you were in a family where you weren't respected, and then you wound up marrying someone who didn't respect you, and you just don't feel good about yourself. Well, guess what? Here's an opportunity where you're at rock bottom, where you can start doing some work to build yourself up. Start spending time with people who make you feel good. Take space from people who tear you down. It doesn't mean you have to cut your friends off. My grandpa Walter used to say, never throw someone away, just put them on a shelf. And it might be time to shelve some people, right? And do activities that make you feel good about yourself. And if you can't think about what they are, sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and write down as many things that you could think of that made you feel competent when you were as young as you can remember. And then go from there, right? Like, what did you do when you were young? This is a whole exercise. You could spend hours doing this. And then, how did that look and why did it disappear? And how can we bring pieces of that back into our purview? And so that's about respect, because when we feel good about ourselves, then our children are going to feel good about themselves. Then we're not going to react so spitefully and angrily and sadly towards our exes who may have hurt us. And we're going to relate better to everybody around us and set the stage for better relationships going forward with everybody.
Well, one of the things I want to just mention is that as far as, having like daily habits,
yes,
I like to recommend to people to try and bookend your day. So when you wake up in the morning, there's so much really good data out there about starting early, meditating, journaling. One of the things I like to do is start off in the morning with 3 things I'm grateful for, and I like to end my day that way as well. And when we book in our days, because we can't control what happens in between, and we get home and we're angry about one thing or something didn't go right. But if you sit down, like you were saying, and writing down certain things, and you go, oh my gosh, this was actually a really good day. Here's what I learned, or here's a win. And
right.
We can turn it into a positive and create more positive energy than, oh my gosh, my day sucked. I stepped in a puddle. My flight was late. It's like when people ask me every day when I see them and they say, hey, how's it going? And I just simply say, it's a day above ground.
Well, fine, fair enough. But we could also give ourselves, if you can't for some reason come up with a gratitude list, and I think gratitude lists are amazing. And even more amazing than a regular gratitude list is make a list of everything you really did not like about your spouse or what happened with your spouse, and now flip that around and find things that you did like. Sometimes noticing the things you did like could cause you momentary pain, but it can break through the anger, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm looking at my notes, and that's why when I was going through your 5 steps, and I said practicing respect for your ex, that was one of my notes in here saying, can you respect your ex? But I think you just answered it.
You just have to notice. It doesn't mean you have to globally respect them, but like they got your kid to school on time. I mean, whatever it is, like the most narrow thing, because we tend as humans to hyper focus on the micro issue that impacted us, right? Like that's what we do. And I think that's natural. But from a human perspective, one of my mantras in my mind is just that never judge anyone on any one meter, right? Some of the kindest people can be the most damaged in some ways. I used to joke that the smokers, those are like the best people. The smokers and drinkers, I used to get the most referrals from them when I was a young lawyer, right? So, and you could be very judgmental because, they're slacker, all the things that we could say about each other. Like every upside has its downside. Sometimes people who are so righteous are wrong. They're so judgmental. I mean, we're so complicated. We're all so complicated, right? So like if we can remove the hurt piece from our dynamic and just focus on like all those other parts of that person that didn't hurt us, you know, we're also all pretty incredible in different ways. It's our hyper focusing on that one thing that really can impact the whole rest of our life in a pretty magnificent negative way. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely.
So moving from respect to peace, you know, when I say peace, like lawyers practically like recoil, like, oh, Gabrielle, peace. Like, what does that mean? All I mean is navigating to neutral, right? So it doesn't mean unicorns and rainbows and love and hope. It just means like being able to be in the room with each other without like feeling your blood pressure raise, right? It's and here, like I'm starting to say in respect, but it's the same thing for peace. Get yourself a mantra, and I love the bookending idea. I say it differently, but it's the same thing. Say a mantra. Like, I am radiantly calm. That's a personal one. I like that because I'm not calm. So I tell myself I'm radiantly calm all the time, many times a day. And I go to yoga 4 or 5 days a week. And for that hour and a half, I just tell myself I'm radiantly calm. I'm radiantly calm as many times as I can remember to keep saying it while my legs are shaking and my, right? Like I can't breathe. So the reason that you want to make saying the mantra or making a gratitude list, whatever works for you, or a vision board if you're like that, if you're a visual person, whatever works for you, the reason you want to do it consistently is because if you do it regularly, as many times a day as you can, preferably bookends with a couple of smatterings, pepper it during the day, is that when the time comes, when you're feeling pushed against the wall, it'll be much easier for you to activate that positive messaging. So if you're not in the habit of saying, I am radiantly calm, when you're pushed against the wall, you're not going to be like, oh, what was that mantra? No, but it's like, for me, it's like right at the tip of my tongue. I'm radiantly calm. And guess what? It calms down the crazy people. It does. And I work with divorce lawyers. Believe me, I know what I'm talking about. Right? I mean, God loves all of them, but like, people are very activated emotionally in my field. And so by telling yourself you're calm, you are actually, believe it or not, creating the portal for calmness for you and for your dynamic. And that creates an element of neutrality and peace, right? And then the fourth, and the fifth after the fourth is forgiveness, which we spent a lot of time on. But the fourth is clarity. So clarity is what's really going on here. Clarity can be looked at a lot of different angles. I'm not sure how you want me to address it. It's from a general perspective, it's like, what's really going on, right? Like, is this person, and why am I feeling how I'm feeling? So in the case where you have, you know, a cheating spouse, does that person just cheat on everyone? Does that person not really know which end is up in their life? Like, is that person just all messed up? Does it have nothing to do with you? You know, does my kid or ex have ADHD and so they can't like organize their stuff, and they're not trying to be mean or lazy. They just actually have a disability, which is interfering with their ability to do things the way you think they should do. Like, I personally feel very fortunate that I view humans as all doing the best they can, no matter how bad that is. Because I think people want to be the best they can be. It's just a lot of people feel really bad about themselves. And so they don't expect much of themselves. And so they don't do that good a job, right? But like, right? Like, I have very high expectations of myself. And so like I show up, and obviously you also do. And like the beauty of sort of the framework of Better Apart is no matter who you are, no matter if you're poor or rich or, you know, whatever ethnicity, or it doesn't matter, wherever you're from, every moment is a moment that you can press restart. You can begin your life again. Now, as I say that, obviously if we're in the middle of a genocide, a Holocaust, you know, whatever, there are obviously things that impact us. But, you know, even during the worst of times, the very worst of times, we always have our minds. You know, my grandparents were German Jewish Holocaust refugees. They're Italian on the other side, but the German Jewish Holocaust refugees, they had to leave all their money behind, right? All they had was their minds and their positive attitudes. And so I feel informed by that in, beyond my life experience and my personal experience and my professional experience, just sort of like the story of my heritage tells me that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. As you were mentioning about your grandparents, Dr. Viktor Frankl pops in my mind, and Man's Search for Meaning. And it's one of those books that, oh my gosh, it was so powerful. And if anybody's out there, I highly recommend getting that book. And one of the things and this is why I say my stupid stuff of, how are you doing today? It's a day above ground, because Dr. Viktor Frankl, his life was, how do I phrase this? It was chosen, as he talks about in the book, Man's Search for Meaning, when he came off the train and there was a guard, and the guard's job was either pointing left or right. One way was to the camps, the other way was to death. And he was chosen to go to the work camps versus the alternative. And one of the things I kept thinking about that moment, that I know it's not as dramatic, but every day, somebody asked me this the other day, I had a Tigger tie on. And I'm notorious when I work, I always wear cartoon ties, and especially Tigger ties, because another book I highly recommend is, and I'm going to I always mess up his name, but it's Dr. Randy Pouch, I think. He was a professor at Carnegie Mellon. He wrote the book, The Last Lecture. And he talked
about, God, that makes me cry, The Last Lecture.
Oh, it's a beautiful book.
Oh, my gosh. The TED Talk is amazing.
Oh, yeah, his Last Lecture, yes.
Oh, my God.
But he talks about in the book, and you'll be able to understand this too, Gabrielle, is that every day we have a choice. And the way he phrased it, and I just loved it, is you have a choice. You can get out of bed being an Eeyore or a Tigger. That's
right.
And so
you're Tigger.
I try to be a Tigger. I do. I have my moments, my Eeyore moments, but I try to be a Tigger. And something that you were talking about is, we could have a great day or a great week, but then we'll start to think about, oh my gosh, I messed up that one little thing, and that one little thing is going to drive us nuts.
Right. We get in these. So in addition to our stories in our minds, we get into these loops, like you just said, the loop, that one stupid little story that goes round and round and round, and it like interferes with us enjoying our day, right? And our life. And it's not that important, most of the things that we obsess about.
I agree. And as you mentioned, step 5 was forgiveness, and we've talked about that. The one little note I put in there, and I don't I wanted. Oh, here it is. For me personally, I would have switched 1 for 4. So 4 being practicing peace before practicing patience, because I felt that, and again, I was reflecting on my own divorce and going through that. And I think I really needed some peace, some, I guess, clarity, my own mantra going through that.
The thing is, that's why the first thing I said is everybody's different. Like for me, patience is it might just be like I wrote it this way because that's my personal quote unquote pain point. I want everybody to do things faster, quicker, more efficiently. But it's more about not just about efficient, but it's also about like intrinsic fairness and unfairness. And like, some people can't even get to peace or neutrality when their brain's not slowed down enough to to even hear anything that's going on around them, which is why I put patience first. But if clarity works best for you first, go for it. Like, this book is written in a way that was very important to me, that the reader, I was imagining a lot of the readers would be flooded, like very upset when they read it. They could just open to whatever chapter they wanted. You don't have to read it in order necessarily. Like, the book is very structured such that you could open one chapter and just every chapter could be read as a standalone.
Well, and I think this is where I really resonated, and I wrote in my notes, I needed this book when I went through my divorce, and it's all capital letters. I really did need something like this, because like I said, I'm an odd duck. I've gone through therapy. I like going through therapy. I love meditation. I love, especially in your book, Gabrielle, the mantras. I really feel like as a man to say, this is a book that is really needed. And again, I'm focusing on the men, because a lot of men would find this, hocus pocus, with.
Oh, that's so funny you should say that, because I just texted to somebody. I hope you don't find this hocus pocus Jiminy Ocus. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Like, it might sound hocus pocus Jiminy Ocus, and I'm not a guy, but I got, well, now you're the third person, like that older man who reached out to me.
Right.
And that other person who said, oh, well, this isn't really written for guys, but it's really great, like it's not, but, and you, I mean, I actually do think that it's just about being human. I don't think it's man or woman. I think we can all feel better in our skin. I think this can help you through your process at any point. If you have the wherewithal to read it at the start of your process, go for it. If you are not sure if you need a divorce or not, I do have a chapter that's called The Pause, and it sounds like in your circumstance that wasn't an option to maybe don't need a divorce, but some people live with ambivalence, right? And so you can look at the lenses as tools for forgiveness, for healing also. Because like you, I'm actually my husband's second wife. He was married before. And so we've been in counseling like our whole marriage. So I have like so many tools that I've learned through counseling and through raising my own children who are, very spirited. I have 3 boys, and that's a lot of energy. So I've learned a lot, and I wanted to share it all. So I do mediation on a platform nationally, and I do coaching for people to get through their divorce nationally. And I have a giveaway. I'm going to try to do it every month. I have right now 28 days of Better Apart for the month of for Valentine's Day on GabrielleHartley.com. So like if any of your listeners just want a little extra, they could always just sign on, go onto my website at GabrielleHartley.com, and they can sign on for the giveaway, or they can contact me if they have specific questions. I'm always happy to answer a question, a one-off for somebody if they need it. Or I also do live videos frequently on Instagram, and I'm always looking for people to write questions. I don't talk specifically to people, but like general issues that might come up for you, for any of your listeners. If they want to, message me at Gabrielle L. Hartley on Instagram. I'm really happy to address any questions like that if they think it would help like a group of people or whatever. I just wanted to give you that information.
No, I'm writing that down. I'll definitely make sure that's in the show notes. Define an elegant divorcing.
So elegant divorcing is the concept of holding your own ground with as much ease, grace, and dignity as you go from one family construct to another. It's about repurposing, reviewing your breakup, not as a tearing and a splitting, but more as a transformational relationship. Because for most of us, we have children with the person. And even if we don't have children, how sad is it to look in retrospect at a big big part of your life as a waste, right? Or as like a lie, because often that's what we do, right? I can't tell you how many times I've sat, I don't know if we even went into this. I worked for a judge in New York City for a number of years and resolved nearly 1,000 cases that were trial ready. I think, maybe 700, whatever, a lot of cases. And the judge I worked for tried so many cases also that weren't before me or were not able to be resolved. And so many people feel like their whole life is a lie. I heard that so many times from people. And what a gift it is that you could give to yourself, right? It's a gift to give yourself the re-narrating of the story of your life. And it's not about telling yourself a lie. It's about retelling yourself the story from a slightly different, more empathetic, loving vantage point. Okay? It's about treating yourself with love and with elegance. And I do have a platform I don't know if you've seen that already. It's called yourelegantdivorce.com. And Your Elegant Divorce is what my consulting goes through. It's the same iterative process. It was actually created in conjunction when I was writing the book. It all came from the same thing, because my backstory was that I worked for this judge and I saw how horribly people treated each other. And my parents were always almost like bragging about how great they got along. And I didn't think they were so great. But then when I saw how bad it was, I was like, wow, you guys are pretty freaking awesome. And that's when I was like, I really need to, give some credibility to this idea. I wanted to make it so that it's not just, and no disrespect to mindfulness people, because mindfulness people get me through my life, right? But I wanted to give real credibility for somebody who's been a lawyer for over 25 years, worked for the head of the New York State divorce court. I know what I'm talking about from the inside out. And I want all of your listeners to know that you all have the power within you to reframe your life and to be that Tigger that's right inside of you, as you'd say.
So one of the things you talk about is navigating the two homes. And when I went through my first divorce, and again, my last and only divorce, okay. Again, you're a lawyer, so this is like legal stuff.
Right.
A good friend of mine said to make sure that in my situation, my son is part of the process of finding a new place, or finding a place to, I shouldn't say new, but finding a place to live. I spent, almost 6 months still living in hotels after the divorce. And so my son and I would, on our weekends together, would be in hotels. And then one day he said, "Can we find a real place to live?" And I was like, okay, we can do that. Uh-huh. So whenever I would look at a townhome, he was part of that process. When it came time to getting furniture, he was part of that process. And so, again, in our situation, my wife's two daughters live, well, one's out of the house, but the other one lives about less than a mile away. And then my son lives about 45 minutes away. So I think we're really blessed in that situation because we still have some proximity. But can you speak about homes that don't have that proximity, that have children that are out of state?
Absolutely. So in Better Part, I have a whole chapter devoted to parenting and concerns that come up and dealing with all kinds of difficulties. But if your child lives out of state, thank God for modern technology. There are so many things that you can do to create ways to continue to communicate with the child. You can FaceTime or, Google Hangout or whatever you can do online with the child. You can do that maybe even daily. You should try to get that into your court order. I can't give obviously legal advice, but I can just give you some information and wisdom on that. One thing I would say is, maybe ask for a contact every day, but settle on 4 days so that it's not onerous. You don't want it to become like a burden on the child. Rather, you want it to be something that's the child is looking forward to and enjoys. So there's, the devil's always in the details, but another thing that you want to do if you're out of state is make sure you get those blocks of time, quality time over quantity. Try to make your trips to go to the child. If the child has a show or is in a game or something, if you can travel there, that's great. If you can't travel there, get somebody there to have you live so you can watch part of it possibly. And most of the cases that I've been involved with, and I've been doing this for, like I said, nearly 25 years. We've really been able to come up with plans where even the person out of state does have a very high degree of contact with the child. Maybe the child spends the whole summer with that person, plus every 3-day weekend, which turns out to be something like 8 out of the 10 months when the kids are in school. They have 3-day weekends. While the kids are in lower grades, sometimes we do extending those 3-day weekends to 4-day weekends so that you get blocks of time. A lot of it comes down to how much you have, your resources, your time and your money, right? So and some cases, the worst of the cases, which maybe is what you're talking about, where we have deep alienation.
Oh, yeah.
In those deep alienation cases, you really, really need to go inward and find a lot of compassion for yourself and for your situation. And, if it were me in that situation, I would really be talking to the universe a lot and to whatever higher power you may or may not believe in. But I feel like all anybody can do is the best they can do. I have represented people who've had really dire circumstances and they have, I'm thinking of this one person in particular, they really turned their own life around and their relationship with their kid is improving. There are sad stories. There just are. That's part of life, right? And maybe we can, but I don't know how to I don't know how to visualize all the sadness of life away. But I can say that even if you're in the most dark, sad place, you can find a tiny little opening for yourself somewhere where you can find some peace so that you have a will to continue living. Because your kid is going to grow up, and most of the time, kids come around. Most of the time.
Well, one of the things that it goes back to, and this is where I really failed, because again, I was looking back, I was in such a deep depression / trauma, is the parenting agreement. And if you don't really take the time, and this is where I really wish I had listened to friends when they said, make sure you get a lawyer. And I just wanted it done and over. And in the state of Colorado, within 90 days, your divorce is final. And so I really didn't think, again, it goes back to clarity. I didn't have the clarity, and I really wish I had taken a step back, and I really wish I had spoken to a lawyer, because the whole parenting agreement was probably the biggest screw ups that I did.
Just generally, anything having to do with your child, you can generally change over time. It's usually modifiable, so
Okay.
You should look at that. And as your child gets older, your child has more say.
Right.
So when your child is 9, 10, 11, it's just going to be straight up best interests. You should find out what the legal standard is where you live. But generally, issues pertaining to child support and child custody are always modifiable because it's against public policy to not be. So it's really important, as a takeaway for your listeners, is to, before you were ever to go into mediation or anything, make sure you at least get one meeting with a lawyer and get yourself a therapist right away. Work with a therapist, even if you just go a couple of times. One of the reasons I do divorce coaching is there's a lot of people who just won't go to a therapist. That just sounds like bad to them. I work with people who go to divorce, who go to therapists. I work with people who don't go to therapists. But I think a good therapist can really get you thinking there. And if you don't like talking, there's trauma therapy, which I think is really appropriate for many people. Trauma therapy does a lot of somatic work where you don't have to talk so much, but you move the trauma through your body and you can release it so that all the pain becomes more of a memory than an actual, and then an emotion.
Yeah, and I agree. And this is a shout out to the men listeners. It's not a sign of weakness asking for help. It's a sign of strength. And it's a common theme on this podcast where we talk about this. And, when I was right before I got divorced, my former spouse and I were going through marriage counseling. And then after the divorce, I stayed with the same therapist because, number one, I really liked her. Number two, I didn't want to have to rehash everything. So I was really, again, grateful that I had a good therapist that, again, I didn't have to stop, go find somebody else. And it worked out really, really well. I greatly appreciate your time today, Gabrielle. And again, the book is Better Apart, the radically positive way to separate. And it is very positive.
And I hope it's very practical for your listeners. And it's available, Amazon actually has it like pretty inexpensively. So, and you can find it right through my website. I have it like right front and center right now.
Okay. GabrielleHartley.com.
Yeah, it's GAB, just so you know how to spell GabrielleHartley.com.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much. It was great to meet, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you for listening to Blending the Family, the podcast. We hope the little kid kicking your seat behind you while flying across the country was less painful than listening to Tommy. Wait. Please leave a rating and review. However you get this podcast, whether it's through the mail or from your neighbor or listening in under the couch. I don't know. You tell me.